Welcome to Greek for a Week. I'm glad you are with us this week. As we continue our study in the book of Philippians, we will be looking at Philippians chapter 2, verses 7 through 8, which again is part of the larger paragraph 2, 5 through 11. If you recall, last week we focused on verses 5 and 6, and that is where Paul is encouraging them to have the attitude that's similar to the same attitude that is found in Christ. And he's going to continue to describe this example of humility that not only is found in Christ, but is Christ. Christ is humble. So these two verses, 7 and 8, will continue that process and of thought that Paul might have. Notice how he begins. So we're going to translate. Here's verse 7 and here's verse 8. He begins with a contrast here, but he made himself nothing by taking the form of a servant. Okay. By being made in human likeness. And when being found in appearance as a man. What did he do? Well, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death of a cross. So as we look through these, I mentioned at the beginning, you have Allah here, which is your strong contrast. And that is contrasting what he established in verse 6. Verse 6, he talked about although Christ existed in the form of God, he did not regard it equality with God a prize to be grasped. But what did he do? Or rather, he made himself nothing. And then what did he do? He added, or he took on the form of a servant. So you have the verb here, ekenosen. Okay, that is an aorist verb. That's a third person singular aorist indicative of kanao. Okay, kanao. So what do you have? Well, you have your augment here in front. The epsilon is your augment. And then because that is a short vowel, as the sen, the ending, the aorist ending gets attached, you are left with an omega because that is a lengthened form from the omicron. You also have then labon, which is an aorist active masculine participle, nominative singular of lambano. So here's your labon. And I am suggesting there that is a participle of means, where he made himself nothing by taking the form of a slave. Then the en ha moi omadi. This prepositional phrase here, you could say in human likeness would be a way to describe that, or in every respect he was like a man. Then you also have another participle, the genomenos, aorist middle participle, masculine nominative singular of genomai. That also is a participle of means. The means by which he took on that form or that human likeness, being found in appearance as a man. Then you have a kai, the kai schemati. Really from here forward, this last phrase, at least in a couple of English translations, they have moved this down to verse 8. So despite the critical text that is found in the UBS or the Nestle-Aland, some translations such as the NIV, the ESV, and the NASB move that phrase down to verse 8. And then this participle here, I've included the word when in my translation to indicate that this is likely a temporal participle, when being found, or when he was seen to be. So really this phrase that the various translations move down to verse 8, I think they're trying to describe this as how others would have viewed Christ. And that is when he was found in the appearance as a man, is when people would have seen him. So then we get down to verse 8, and you have the very first word there, the tape nosen, third person singular, aorist active indicative of tape nao. He humbled, and then here's your reflexive pronoun, he humbled himself. Then we have genomenos again, another form of genomai, aorist middle participle, masculine nominative singular, again of genomai, probably a participle of manner. That is how Christ humbled himself, and that was by becoming, and then by coming what? Here's our word here, by becoming obedient. Then lastly, you have the word de here, which obviously is a conjunction. You have two uses of thanatu, death here, which really what happens is you go from the general here to the point of death, then you get down to the specific, the death of a cross, and that's where the de comes in. It continues the development of Paul's argument, but it takes death in a general sense down to the specificity of the death, which is on a cross. So those two verses there, 7 and 8, they wrap up really verses 5 through 8. I want to move on next week and look at verses 9 and 10, maybe even 11, and kind of wrap things up, and then we'll move on to a diagram so that I can show you just how this important theological passage can be brought together from a grammatical and syntactical standpoint. Have a great week. That was Philippians 2, 7 through 8.